After a while, I took leave of my relatives and set out for Yasothon. There I met Ajahn Singh with a following of 80 monks and novices, staying in the Yasothon cemetery, the spot where the jail is now standing. Soon afterwards, a letter came from Phra Sarakun, the ecclesiastical head of Kon Kayen province at Wat Srijan, splendorous moon temple, inviting Ajahn Singh to Kon Kayen. So the citizens of Yasothon, headed by Ajahn Rin, Ajahn Dang, and Ajahn Ontar, rented 2 buses, and we all set out for Kon Kayen. Ajahn Bot, the first meditation monk I had met, went along as well. The first night we spent in Royet, and the second at Ancestor Hill in Mahasarakam, a spot where the local people said the spirits were fierce. Crowds of people came to listen to Ajahn Singh's sermons. I began to realize that I wasn't going to find any peace and quiet in these circumstances, so I took my leave of Ajahn Singh and, accompanied by a novice, went to visit my relatives, Kun Mahawichai, an uncle on my mother's side of the family, in Namphong district. When I arrived there, I found a number of families in the area related to me. They were all glad to see me and gathered around to ask news of the folks back home. They fixed up a place in a forest of giant trees on the bank of the Namphong River, and there I stayed for quite a few days. The novice who had come with me took his leave to visit his relatives back home in Sakon Nakhon, so I stayed on alone in the forest, which was full of nothing but monkeys. After a while, I began to develop a persistent headache and earache. I told my Aunt Ngoan about this, and she sent me to see a nephew of hers, a policeman in Phon district. He in turn had a driver take me to Nakhon Ratchasima, where I stayed at Wat Sakai. I spent 3 days looking for my relatives there, but couldn't find them. The reason I wanted to find my relatives was that I had my heart set on going to Bangkok to take care of my illness and to find Ajahn Mun. Finally, a rickshaw driver took me to the government housing settlement for railway officials, where I met my cousin, May Wandi, the wife of Kun Kai. Everyone seemed glad to see me and asked me to stay on to spend the rains retreat there in Nakhon Ratchasima. I didn't accept their invitation though, because as I told them, I was set on going to Bangkok. So my cousin bought me a train ticket to Hua Lamphong station in Bangkok. As the train passed through the Phaya Yen jungle and burst out into the open fields of Saraburi, I thought of my elder brother who had a family at the Naung Ta Low Water Gate, the one I had visited back when I was still a layman. So when we stopped at Banfachi Junction, I got off and walked all the way to my brother's house. On arriving though, I learned that he had taken his family and moved to Nakhon Sawan province. The only people left that I knew in the village were some friends and older people. I stayed there until the end of May, when I told my friends of my plans to go to Bangkok. They bought me a ticket and accompanied me to the station. I took the train all the way to Bangkok and got off when it arrived at Hua Lamphong station. Never before in my life had I ever been to Bangkok. I had no idea of how to find my way to Wat Srapatham, so I called a rickshaw driver and asked him, "How much will you charge to take me to Wat Srapatham?" 50 satang. 50 satang? Why so much? Wat Srapatham is practically just around the corner. So in the end, he took me for 15 satang. When I reached Wat Srapatham, I paid my respects to my preceptor, who told me that Chow Kun Upali had invited Ajahn Mun to spend the rains in Chiang Mai. So as it turned out, I spent the rains that year at Wat Srapatham. My quarters were quite a ways away from my preceptors. I made a resolution that rains retreat to practice meditation as I always had, and at the same time not to neglect any of my duties in the temple, or, unless it was really unavoidable, any of the services a new monk is supposed to perform for his preceptor. I was very strict in practicing meditation that year, keeping to myself most of the time. My one thought being to maintain stillness of mind, I took part in the morning and evening chanting services, and attended to my preceptor every morning and late afternoon. I had noticed that the way he was living left a large opening for me to attend to him in a way that appealed to me. No one was looking after his bedding, cleaning his spittoons, arranging his betel nut, keeping his mats and sitting cloths in order. This was my opening. So from that point on, I observed my duties toward my preceptor as best I could. After a while, I felt that I was serving him to his satisfaction and had found a place in his affections. At the end of the rains, he asked me to take on the responsibility of living in and watching over the temple storehouse, the green hall, where he took his meals. Although I had set my mind on treating him as a father, I had never dreamed that being loyal and good could have dangers like this. So at the beginning of the hot season, I took leave of my preceptor to go out and find some seclusion in the forest. I left Bangkok, passing through Ayutthaya, Saraburi, Lopburi, Takli, Phukar, all the way to Nakhon Sawan, where, passing through Tha Tako district and around Boraphet Lake, I reached my brother's place. There, I met not only my brother, but also many old friends from the days back when I was still a layman. During my stay in Nakhon Sawan, I lived in a forest about half a kilometre from the village. One day I heard the calls of two elephants fighting, one a wild elephant and the other a domesticated elephant in rut. They battled for 3 days, running until the wild elephant could no longer put up a fight and died. With that, the elephant in rut went insane, running wild through the forest where I was staying, chasing people and goring them with his tusks. The owner of the elephant, Kun Jop, and other people in the area came to invite me to take shelter in the village, but I wouldn't go. Even though I was somewhat afraid, I decided to depend on my powers of endurance and my belief in the power of goodwill. Then one day, at about 4 in the afternoon, the elephant came running to the clearing where I was staying and came to a stop about 40 meters from my hut. At the time, I was sitting in the hut, meditating. Hearing his calls, I stuck my head out and saw him standing there in a frightening stance with his ears back and his tusks gleaming white. The thought occurred to me, if he comes running this way, he'll be on me in less than 3 minutes. And with that, I lost my nerve. I jumped out of the hut and ran for a large tree about 6 meters away. But just as I reached it and had taken my first step up the trunk, a sound like a person whispering came to my ears. "You're not for real. You're afraid to die. Whoever's afraid to die will have to die again." Hearing this, I let go of the tree and hurried back to the hut. I got into a half-lotus position and with my eyes open, sat facing the elephant and meditating, spreading thoughts of goodwill. While all this was happening, I could hear the villagers crying and yelling to one another. "That monk," meaning me, "is really in a fix. Isn't anybody going to help him?" But that was all they did, cry and yell. No one, not even a single person, had the courage to come anywhere near me. I sat there for about 10 minutes, radiating thoughts of goodwill. Finally, the elephant flapped its ears up and down a few times, turned around, and walked back into the forest. A few moments later, I got up from where I was sitting and walked out of the forest into the open rice fields. Kunjop and the others came thronging around me, amazed that I had come through without mishap. The next day, crowds of people from all over the area came to see me and to ask for good things, amulets. The word was that because the elephant had been afraid to come near me, I was sure to have some good, strong amulets. Seeing all the commotion, I decided to cut short my stay, so a few days later I said goodbye to my relatives and headed back to Bangkok. I reached Wat Srapatham in the month of May. During this, my second rains retreat there, my preceptor had me take over the temple accounts from Phra Bunrod. At the same time, my companions talked me into studying for the 3rd level Dhamma exams. This meant that I had a lot of added burdens. Not only was there my preceptor to attend to, but also the temple accounts and inventories to keep on top of that. I had to study Dhamma textbooks and keep up my meditation. With all these added responsibilities, my state of mind began to grow a bit slack. This can be gauged by the fact that the first year, when any of the other young monks came to talk to me about worldly matters, women and wealth, I really hated it. But the second year, I began to like it. My 3rd year at Wat Srapatham, I began to study Pali grammar after having passed the 3rd level Dhamma exams in 1929. My responsibilities had become heavier, and I was getting pretty active at discussing worldly matters. But when my way of life began to reach this point, there were a number of events, both inside and outside the temple, that helped bring me to my senses. One day, toward the end of the 2nd rains retreat, I discovered that more than 900 baht had disappeared from the temple accounts. For days I checked over the books, but couldn't find where it had gone. Normally, I made a practice of reporting to my preceptor on the 1st of each month, but when the 1st of the month came around this time, I didn't go to see him. I questioned everyone who worked with me, but they all denied having any knowledge of the missing funds. Finally, another possibility occurred to me. Nai Bun, a student who attended to my preceptor. Some mornings, he would ask for the key to the green hall to keep while I went out on my arms round. So I asked Phra Bunrod to question Nai Bun, who finally admitted to having stolen the money while I was out. The whole affair was my preceptor's fault. One morning, he had been invited to accept some donations on the day following a cremation at the house of a nobleman. But his ceremonial fan and shoulder bag were kept in my room, and because I had gone out for alms and taken the key with me, he couldn't get to them. So from then on, he told me to leave the key with Nibun every morning before going out for alms, and this was how the money had disappeared. I was lucky that Nibun had admitted his guilt. I went back to check the books carefully and discovered that, of the missing funds, more than 700 baht had come from the temple funds, and the remainder from my preceptor's personal funds. So on October 5th, now that everything was in order, I went to tell my closest friends, Phra Bunrod and Phra Chayam, I'm going to make a report to the abbot at 5 o'clock today. Don't, Phra Chayam said. I'll make up for the missing money myself. I appreciated his offer, but didn't think it was a good idea. It would be better to be open and above board about the whole affair. Otherwise, the boy would start developing bad habits. My preceptor had gotten cross with both of my friends over the temple books many times before, so when the time came for me to make my report, they went to hide in their quarters, shutting their doors tight, leaving me to face my preceptor alone. Before I made my report, I went to the green hall, swept and scrubbed the floor, prepared the betel nut, spread out a sitting mat for my preceptor, and then sat there waiting for him. A little after 4 o'clock, he left the large new set of quarters built for him by Lady Talap, wife of Chow Friar Yomaraj, and came to sit in the green hall. When he had finished his tea and betel nut, I approached him to make my report about the missing funds. Before I had even finished my first sentence, he got cross. Why have you waited till the 5th this month to make your report? Usually you make it on the 1st. The reason I didn't come on the 1st, I answered, was because I had some doubts about the accounts and the people involved. But now I'm sure that the money is really missing, and I've found the guilty party. Who? He asked. Nibun, I answered. He's already confessed. Bring him here, he ordered, and then added, This is embarrassing. Don't let word of this get out. So Phra Bunrod fetched Nibun, who admitted his guilt to my preceptor. The final outcome was that Nibun had to make up for the missing funds. Now that this was all taken care of, I asked to resign my position so that I could go off to the forest to meditate. Before the affair had been settled, there had been one night when I couldn't get any sleep all night long. All I could think of was that I would have to disrobe and get a job to make up for the missing funds. At the same time, I didn't want to disrobe. These two thoughts fought back and forth in my mind until dawn. But when I broached the idea of resigning with my preceptor, he wouldn't let me go. I'm an old man now, he said, and aside from you, there's no one I can trust to look after things for me. You'll have to stay here for the time being. So I had to stick it out for another year. The third rains retreat. My preceptor had me come stay in his new quarters to help fix up the place and assist him with his hobby, repairing clocks. My old duties I was able to pass on to Phra Chayam, which was something of a load off my mind. But looking at the state of my meditation, I could see that my practice had grown slack. I was becoming more and more interested in worldly matters. So I decided to put up a fight. One day it occurred to me, if I stay on here in the city, I'll have to disrobe. If I stay a monk, I'll have to leave the city and go into the forest. These two thoughts became the theme of my meditation day and night. One day, I went up to a hollow space at the top of the chedi and sat in meditation. The theme of my meditation was, should I stay or should I disrobe? Something inside me said, I'd rather disrobe. So I questioned myself, this place where you're living now, prosperous in every way, with its beautiful homes and streets, with its crowds of people, what do they call it? And I answered, Phra Nakhon, the great metropolis, i.e., heaven on earth. And where were you born? I was born in Double Marsh Village, Mwangsam Sib, Ubon Ratchathani. And now that I've come to the great metropolis, I want to disrobe. And in Double Marsh Village, what did you eat? How did you live? How did people make their living? And what did you wear? And what were the roads and houses like? Nothing at all like the great metropolis. So this prosperity here, what business is it of yours? This was when I answered, the people in the great metropolis aren't diva sons or diva daughters or anything. They're people and I'm a person. So why can't I make myself be like them? I questioned myself back and forth like this for several days running until I finally decided to call a halt. If I was going to disrobe, I'd have to make preparations. Other people, before disrobing, got prepared by having clothes made and so forth. But I was going to do it differently. I was going to leave the monkhood in my mind first to see what it would be like. So late in the quiet of a moonlit night, I climbed up to sit inside the chedi and asked myself, if I disrobe, what will I do? I came up with the following story. If I disrobe, I'll have to apply for a job as a clerk in the Fenfag Snuff and Stomach Medicine Company. I had a friend who had disrobed and gotten a job there, earning 20 baht a month, so it made sense for me to apply for a job there too. I'd set my mind on being honest and hard-working, so that my employer would be satisfied with my work. I was determined that wherever I lived, I'd have to act in such a way that the people I lived with would think highly of me. As it turned out, the drug company finally hired me at 20 baht a month, the same salary as my friend. I made up my mind to budget my salary so as to have money left over at the end of each month, so I rented a room in the flats owned by Phra Fakti in the Pratunam, Watergate section of town. The rent was 4 baht a month. Water, electricity, clothing and food would add up to another 11 baht, leaving me with an extra 5 baht at the end of each month. My second year on the job, my boss came to like and trust me so much that he raised my salary to 30 baht a month. Taking out my expenses, I was left with 15 baht a month. Finally, he was so content with my work that he made me supervisor of all the workers, with a 40 baht salary, plus a cut of the profits, adding up altogether to 50 baht a month. At this point, I was feeling very proud of myself, because I was making as much as the district official back home. And as for my friends back home, I was in a position way above them all, so I decided it was time to get married so that I could take a beautiful young Bangkok bride back home for a visit, which would please my relatives no end. This was when my plans seemed to take on a little class. So now that I was going to get married, what sort of person would she be? I made up my mind that the woman I married would have to have the 3 attributes of a good wife. 1. She'd have to come from a good family. 2. She'd have to be in line for an inheritance. 3. She'd have to be good-looking and have a pleasing manner. Only if a woman had these 3 attributes would I be willing to marry her. So I asked myself, where are you going to find a woman like this, and how will you get to know her? This is where things began to get complicated. I tried thinking up all sorts of schemes, but even if I actually did meet such a woman, she wouldn't be interested in me. The women who would be interested in me weren't the sort I'd want to marry. Thinking about this, I'd sometimes heave a heavy sigh, but I wasn't willing to give in. Finally, it occurred to me, wealthy people send their daughters to the high-class schools, like the Back Palace School or Mrs. Cole's. Why don't I go have a look around these schools in the morning before classes and in the evening when school lets out? So that's what I did, until I noticed an attractive girl, the daughter of a friar. The way she walked and the way she dressed really appealed to me, I arranged, so that our paths crossed every day. In my hand, I carried a little note that I threw down in front of her. The first time, she didn't pay me any attention. Day after day, our paths crossed. Sometimes our eyes would meet. Sometimes I'd stand in her way. Sometimes she'd smile at me. When this happened, I made it a point to have her get my note. Finally, we got to know each other. I made a date for her to skip school the next day so that I could show her around town. As time passed, we came to know each other, to like each other, to love each other. We told each other our life stories, the things that had made us happy and the things that had made us sad. From the very beginning up to the present, I had a salaried job at no less than 50 baht a month. She had finished the 6th year of secondary school and was the daughter of a very wealthy friar. Her looks, her manner, and her conduct were everything I had been hoping for. Finally, we agreed to become married secretly. Because we loved each other, I got to sleep with her beforehand. She was a good person, so before we were to be officially married, she told her parents furious. They threw her out of the house. So she came to live with me as my wife. I wasn't too upset by what her parents had done, for I was determined to work my way into their affections. We went to rent a flat in a better district, the Srapatham Watergate area. The rent here was 6 baht a month. My wife got a job at the same company where I was working. starting out at 20 baht a month, but she soon got a raise to 30 a month. Together then, we were making 80 a month, which pleased me. As time passed, my position advanced. My employer trusted me completely, and at times would have me take over his duties in his absence. Both my wife and I were determined to be honest and upright in our dealings with the company, and ultimately our earnings, our salaries plus my percentage of the profits, reached 100 a month. At this point, I felt I could breathe easy, but my dreams still hadn't been fulfilled. So I began to buy presents, good things to eat and other nice things, to take to my parents-in-law to show my good intentions toward them. After a while, they began to show some interest in me and eventually had us move into their house. At this point, I was really pleased. I was sure to be in line for part of the inheritance. But living together for a while revealed certain things about my behavior that rubbed my parents-in-law the wrong way, so in the end they drove us out of the house. We went back to live in a flat as before. This was when my wife became pregnant. Not wanting her to do any hard work, I hired a servant woman to look after the house and help with the housework. Hired help in those days was very cheap, only 4 baht a month. As my wife came closer to giving birth, she began to miss work more and more often. I had to keep at my job. One night, I sat down to look over our budget. The 100 baht we had once earned was probably as much as we'd ever earn. I had no further hopes for a raise. Our expenses were mounting every day. 1 baht a month for electricity, 1 baht and 50 satang for water. Charcoal and rice each at least 6 baht a month. The help, 4 baht a month. And on top of it all, the cost of our clothing. After my wife gave birth, our expenses mounted still higher. She wasn't able to work, so we lost her percentage of the profits. After a while, she became ill and missed work for an extended period. My employer cut her salary back to 15 baht a month. Our medical bills rose. My wife's salary wasn't enough for her needs, so she had to cut into mine. My old salary of 50 baht was now completely gone by the end of each month. In the end, my wife's illness proved fatal. I had to borrow 50 baht from my employer, which, along with my own savings of 50, went toward her funeral expenses, which totaled 80 baht. I was then left with 20 baht and a small child to raise. What was I to do now? Before, I had breathed easily. Now it seemed as if life was closing in on me. I went to see my parents-in-law, but they gave me the cold shoulder, so I hired a wet nurse for the child. The wet nurse was a low-class woman, but she took awfully good care of the child. This led me to feel love and affection toward her, and ultimately she became my second wife. My new wife had absolutely no education. She couldn't even read or write. My income at this point was now only 50 baht, enough just to get by. After a while, my new wife became pregnant. I did my best to make sure she didn't have to do any heavy work, and I did everything I could to be good to her, but I couldn't help feeling a little disappointed that life had turned out so differently from my original plans. After my new wife gave birth, we both helped to raise the children until both my first wife's child and my new wife's child were old enough to feed and take care of themselves. This was when my new wife started acting funny, playing favorites, giving all her love and attention to her own child, and none to my first. My first child started coming to complain to me all the time that my new wife had been unfair in this way or that. Sometimes the two children would start fighting. At times I'd come home from work, and my first child would run to me with one version of what had happened. My second child would have another version, and my wife still another. I didn't know whom to side with. It was as if I was standing in the middle, and my wife and children were pulling me off in 3 different directions. My new child wanted me to buy this or that. Eventually, my wife and children started competing with one another to see who would get to eat the best food, wear the best clothes, and squander the most money. It got so that I couldn't sit down and talk with any of them at all. My salary was being eaten up every month. My family life was like falling into a thorn patch. Finally, I decided to call a halt. My wife wasn't what I had hoped for. My earnings weren't what I had hoped for. My children weren't what I had hoped for. So I left my wife, was reordained, and returned to the contemplative life. When I came to the end of the story, my interest in worldly affairs vanished. The sense that life was closing in on me disappeared. I felt as free as if I were up floating in the sky. Something inside me sighed, with relief. I told myself that if this was the way things would be, I'd do better not to disrobe. My old desire to disrobe was reduced about 50 to 60%. Throughout this period, a number of other events occurred that helped turn my thoughts in the right direction. Some nights, I'd dream that my old meditation teachers had come to see me. Sometimes they'd be fierce with me. Sometimes they'd scold me. But there were 4 events. You'd have to call them strange, and they certainly were important in changing my thinking. I have to beg the reader's pardon for mentioning them, though, because there's nothing at all pleasant about them. But because they were good lessons, I feel they should go on record. The first event. During the period when I was spending my nights thinking about worldly matters, there was one day I started feeling constipated, so that afternoon I took a laxative, figuring that if the medicine acted as it had before, I'd have to go to the bathroom at about 9 p.m. For some reason, it didn't work. The next morning I went for my alms round down the lane to Surapatham Palace, just as I was coming to a house where they had prepared food to give to the monks. All of a sudden, I had to go to the bathroom so badly I could hardly stand it. I couldn't even walk to the house to accept their food. All I could do was hold myself in and walk in little pigeon steps until I came to an acacia grove. By the side of the road, I plunked down my bowl and hurried through the fence into the grove. I wanted to sink my head down into the ground and die right there. When I had finished, I left the grove, picked up my alms bowl, and finished my round. That day, I didn't get enough to eat. Returning to the temple, I warned myself, this is what it's going to be like if you disrobe. Nobody's going to fix food to put in your bowl. The whole event was really a good lesson. The second event. One day I went out early on my alms round. I crossed Elephant Head Bridge, passed Samyaik, and turned down Fetbury Road. There was no one to place even a spoonful of rice in my bowl. It so happened that as I was passing a row of flats, I saw an old Chinese man and woman yelling and screaming at each other in front of their flat. The woman was about 50 and wore her hair in a bun. The old man wore his hair in a pigtail. As I came to their flat, I stopped to watch. Within about 2 seconds, the old woman grabbed a broom and hit the man over the head with the handle. The old man grabbed the woman by the hair and kicked her in the back. I asked myself, if that were you, what would you do? And then I smiled. You'd probably end the marriage for good. I felt more pleased seeing this incident than if I had received a whole bowl full of food. That night I meditated on what I had seen. It seemed that my mind was regaining its strength and bit by bit becoming more and more disenchanted with worldly affairs. The third event. It was a holiday. I had started out on my alms round before dawn, going down to the Srapatham Watergate Market and then up the lane behind the temple. This was a dirt lane where horses were stabled. Rain was falling and the road surface was slippery. I was walking in a very composed manner past the house of a layperson I knew who frequented the temple. My bowl was full of food and I was thinking very absent-mindedly of worldly matters, so absent-mindedly that I slipped and fell sideways into a mud hole by the side of the road. Both of my knees were sunk about a foot into the muck. My food was spilled all over the place. My body was covered with mud. I had to hurry back to the temple, and when I arrived, I warned myself. See what happens when you even just think of such things. My heart was slowly becoming more and more disenchanted with worldly matters. My old opinions had reversed to the point where I now saw marriage as something for kids, not for grown-ups. The fourth event. The next morning, I went out for alms, taking my usual route down Fetbury Road. I came to the palace of His Highness Prince Daninavat. This prince made a habit of donating food to monks at large every day. It so happened that someone had set up a bowl of rice across the street from the palace that day, so I decided to accept rice from the new donors first. After accepting their rice, I turned around to cross the street when one of Nilert's white buses came whizzing past, less than a foot from my head. The passengers on the bus started yelling and screaming, and I myself was stunned. I had just missed being killed by a bus. When I finally went to accept rice from the prince, I had to exert a great deal of self-control because I was shaking all over. I then returned to the temple. All of these events I took to be warnings because during that period, my thoughts about worldly matters would start flaring up anywhere and at any time.